people, welcome to White Line Fever Live, and a special welcome to people who are watching on the Hot Metal Facebook page live. And for once, these interviews are on your time and not mine, which is awesome because my guest is actually in Oz. And also, if you're listening on the podcast, welcome back. And from Shotgun Mistress, Glenn Patrick. Glenn, how are you, mate?
Steve, I'm absolutely fantastic, and thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And it's great to hear an Aussie voice in the UK.
Yes. Now you were telling me you're beautifully framed there as well. You're looking like you're sort of relaxing in bed. But you're off to Japan on Monday, and the record's out tomorrow. That's going to date this audio immediately when I say that. But is calm before the storm a little bit?
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, as you can see, I'm trying to relax before all the excessive craziness starts as of tomorrow. So I think everything's in place, and I think everything's fine. But yeah, definitely, finally the album's going to be out. It's been a long time coming, so we're just going to be relieved that it's out. And yeah.
Before we started recording and broadcasting, there's a bit of an expat vibe in your band, isn't there? Because your guitarist used to live here, and I'll ask you about this later if he's talked about it, and work as an embalmer, Matt Wilcox, and you were actually born in Torquay, which, believe it or not, there is a surfing mecca in the UK, and that is Torquay. So
That is talking. Yeah.
so you're not quite an reverse ACD. No, you're an Anglo-Australian kind of little bit, aren't you? A little bit, tiny bit.
Yeah, I'm a mutt. Yeah, no, home of Faulty Towers, I believe Torquay is as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's my claim to fame. That's about as far as it goes.
Now, I thought I'd start. Now, this is a sort of I could start with a bunch of questions that have little short, specific answers, but I thought I'd start with a big question that has, hopefully, a big answer, which is that, as I said, dating the audio a little bit, but you're off to Japan soon. Your record's out tomorrow. And the band was formed in 2018 only. Obviously, you all got experience in different bands. So if I'm sitting here now and I want to start a band and I want to be touring Japan in 6 years and I want to have a record out and a record, where do I start? How do you get to here in 6 years?
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, everyone's going to say the same thing. Everyone's going to say hard work, determination, luck, knowing your craft. I've been working in the industry, not just with Shotgun, but yeah, I do a similar thing to, I believe, what Judith does over there, but over here. So I run AR promotion. I wanted to get to know the industry inside and out, and that was a really good way. So that's the one thing that I do sort of implore artists to do, is to really get to know the industry, not just as an artist, because God, you've got to be everything these days, don't you? From being an artist to being, we're we're essentially just a glorified retailer store, really, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And when we put music on show, that's essentially just like this pop-up store, and we just love doing what we're doing. And yeah, that's what I would sort of suggest to people, is just to really get to know the industry you're in. Try and do as much of it yourself before you can't, and yeah, you tend to sort of reap the rewards, and helping each other out. I mean, there's a lot of the tall poppy syndrome here, especially in Australia, but I guess helping out other artists, and that's how we've sort of made it to support some bigger bands. We'll help release their music. In return, they'll chuck us on support. So it's all about not doing the Oliver please so I want some more, and having it be a one-way thing, but sort of just to sort of help each other out.
Yeah, I want to. That actually leads into some other questions about the industry I was going to ask a little later. But just to follow up on what you just said, you said you sort of a glorified retail sale. So basically, like most people, including me, I guess, wouldn't have an idea of the business of a band. So your main sort of thing, like, you're promoting the music, which in turn promotes physical sales, and that's mostly of merch. And is that your and I don't know, you tell me about gigs. Is that the main income? Is that this, as a business, if you strip away all the romance of rock, is that your business? Is that the business is selling merch, or is it selling physical product? What is it?
Yeah, essentially, you look at your music and your creative aspects to the music as a product at the end of the day. And I know
Mm,
it sucks to say because it
mm,
is, yeah, it feels like it crushes the whole reason you're in the industry in the first place is to use it as a creative outlet and
mm,
to sort of tell your story, which is the most important thing. So if anyone says, it isn't enough this or it isn't enough that, um, you know, definitely hold yourself and keep your own, because you can get carried away in trying to worry about what other people want from you and what people think. So that's first and foremost. And I think from a business side of things, everything else sort of just falls into place. I mean, the essentials of what you need. I mean, how are you going to make an income from your music in the first place? And starting off, it's mainly going to be from live performances, ticket sales, and also merch as well.
mm.
And merch is something that we sort of pride ourselves on. We try to make it as pleasing to the eye as possible, have as much variations as possible. Um, but yeah, I mean that's essentially where it's at. And then after that, everything else tends to sort of work for itself afterwards.
Yeah. Now, your first album, um, it's obviously you're moving on to the new one, Kings of Revolution now, but there was some really interesting stuff on the first album, which I think probably got people's attention. And one of them was "No Friend of Mine," which is kind of an anti-domestic abuse type song and stuff like that. I when you were doing that, I mean, how did you discover that was resonating with people? Did you deliberately pitch it as something that was going to hook people, or was it sort of organically discovered? And how did you feel that you were starting to gain traction? What were the signs?
Yeah, good question, man. We didn't really utilize any specific uh, song. No Friend of Mine wasn't even in thoughts for it to be an actual single. That was the first track that we wrote. It hit pretty close to home, so there was definitely a story behind it, but it wasn't the story that we felt was going to be the thing that was going to stick and resonate with people.
Mm,
It was literally a taste test song to throw it out there in demo form first and see what happened and see how the people, the audience reacted. We're essentially a legacy genre these days.
mm,
So being able to figure out what, how people felt about it, I think was pretty important to start off with. We wrote this song because it was, I guess, in the early days of Shotgun, we all had a lot of things to say. A lot of it, unfortunately, was sort of negative connotations, really, and that was unfortunately about domestic abuse. It was hitting quite close to home to us, especially with our drummer Dave and his sister, who unfortunately passed away and was a victim of it. And you probably heard more story about that in the ballad, May She Never Walk Alone, off the
yes.
debut album as well.
Oh, that was
So
my
those
next
two,
question. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, it was a really horrible time. I think it was something that we'd sort of write to help, his family, be able to grieve essentially. I know it puts it down on interviews like this talking about it, but I think it is really important to sort of talk about these things because you can never talk about it enough.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, I guess bringing on this follow-up album, it's brought this new album into more of a positive light. We're writing more about positive things, and we wanted to sort of show that there is a bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
I think bad things happen to you. The only good thing about it is giving you the ability to talk about it to others, and then and it can help people. You know what I mean? Like it's the only blessing that comes with a terrible event is that it gives you the ability to share your knowledge. So, and I'm probably, I guess I'm going back to the first album, but I think a lot of people watching probably still don't know much about the band or about any of these stories. So I still think it's probably worth talking about.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. Now the new album, because we're going to go into a song and we'll want to play something off the new album, not the first album. So can you just sort of introduce it a little bit, as far as the process, how old some of these songs are, how long it took to record, where you recorded, who you worked with, all that sort of stuff, and then pick a song, I guess, mate.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So this is our sophomore album. It's the second album, Kings of the Revolution. It's an album that we sort of started writing, and I guess we probably finished writing half the album before the first album was really out. So there's a lot of songs that go back a few years, which is why I mentioned before. It's great to finally have everything out so we can sort of start again. This album, the writing process in this band's really simplified comparatively to a lot of the other projects that I've been in the past. Matt is a phenomenal guitarist and a really good writer, so he'll essentially write the guitar parts for the actual songs all in order. He'll give literally a song's worth of guitar to me, and then I'll put the melody and the lyrics over it, and the vocals. And then I give it to Dave drums and Ben bass, and that's how it works. Ben has written a good maybe 50% of this album as well, so it's got a little bit more of a, I don't know, he's very like Van Halen, Kiss esque sort of vibes about it. So anything like that, he's written parts too. So I know that in say Shot Down, for instance, like there's sort of little riffs at the start, diddle-a-doo, diddle-a-doo, very Van Halen ish, and that definitely came from Ben. So yeah, I guess the writing part of the album came really naturally and really easy. It's a lot of fun doing it that way. You don't need a huge studio to work on it. You just pretty much recording off our phones or just off basic instrument processing on your laptop.
Mm.
And when we were writing songs, we wrote a song, Mary Jane, which was the third single that we released back in April. We collaborated with the maestro himself, Rusty Brown from Electric Mary. He's a dear friend of ours, and we've helped each other out over the past few years. We jumped on tour with him. I helped release their music as well. So um, he was nice enough to jump on board. And Mary Jane, even though the band Electric Mary, similar names, it actually had nothing to do with it. Was just a fluke that was a similar name, and I think it worked really well.
Welcome back to White Line Fever. Thanks for continuing to watch if you're watching, and if you're on the podcast, as I said, welcome back. And that's the second part of the interview with Glenn Patrick from Shotgun Mistress. Now, Glenn, you were saying in the last part of the interview that you're a publicist, and I was actually I wasn't sure when I was doing the questions actually which members I was speaking to, but I wrote down this question anyway because I can't imagine like what it's like from the artist side doing this process, what we're doing now, because I'm involved in a website, and I think there's my website, and then there's the band, and then there's, I guess most of us think there's a dozen other websites, but actually there's like thousands of other websites, and all different levels of professionalism, and in many cases we're all, unless you're at the top level, the bands are giving up their time, and most of the people running websites and writing for websites, taking photos for websites, they're giving up their time, maybe with the aim
Absolutely.
with the aim of mainly eventually maybe earning a few quid. And there's different levels of professionalism. I mean, I've worked as a journalist, but there's people who have no experience at all at journalism, and who maybe behave very differently to a professional journalist would with a band. So I just wondered, like, from your point of view, if you could describe the scene, like try to explain to me from your side what the process is like, what the scene is like, and how the actual number of websites that are out there, and the global reach of these websites and these rock enthusiasts, like.
Yeah. No, totally get it, man. And it can be extremely daunting, especially as an artist. And it can be daunting as a journo as well, because
Mm,
there's, as an artist and as a journo, hand in hand, you essentially these days you can be, you know, attributed to white noise.
mhm.
So how are you gonna, break that cycle and really sort of reach out and say, hey, I'm here. It's so easy to, it's quite cheap to record music because you can do it from home. I know you've got to buy your own gear and whatnot, but at least you can spend more money on the marketing side of it. And I think marketing is really important. If you spend all your money on recording and then don't have enough money for marketing, it can fall by the wayside. And I guess don't I tend to focus on the local area first and let it sort of snowball from there. We focus on Australia. We've got people, like BJF over in Europe that help us out there as well, and some guys over in the States. So it's just trying to pick the right people for the job, and the first few times it might be wrong. They might get nothing for you. It might not work out right. Maybe the song isn't right. I tell clients this all the time. I mean, even though we think that it's a really good song and we think it can do really well, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's going to end up like. So I guess you just got to find like-minded people who really love what you do, and people who are really passionate about music in general, especially the genre, because I think that makes a big difference too. Such as yourself, I know you're taking all this time out just to talk to little old us from Melbourne. So
I'm grateful
you
I'm grateful you're bothering to talk to me. But I mean, where are the kind of soft spots? Because also, like, I find I don't want to talk. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here, which is kind of like publicist journo talk and not interesting to anybody else. But I find that, like, for instance, the people, if I do this interview and you say something newsworthy, then someone else writes a news story off what. Oh, I'm going to talk about this because it is one of my favorite subjects. Someone else writes a story off what you say, and they get advertising, they get hits. And I'm just sitting here like a mug as an enthusiast who's given up my time and written a 1,200 word interview Q&A or whatever. Some of these Q&As go, "How are you today?" "Good, thanks." You know what I mean? So, and then, but I find musicians resent straight news stories being written off a long interview the way an athlete or a politician wouldn't. It's something about the way their minds work that they call it clickbait. Even if they said it, they'll say it's clickbait. And I find it's really interesting. Musicians, I guess it's maybe the aesthetic of writing a song. You don't put the best bit at the start. You've got to be a bit artistic about it. And so they really hate straight news stories written off things that they say in interviews. Why is that? Why don't they accept it the way other people, entertainers like actors, would accept it? They don't understand the process. There's something weird about it,
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, personally, I think any news is good news. I don't like that they'd be able to utilize something that you've done and then go on to take the claim for themselves. That's something that obviously no one should be putting up with.
Yeah, but I've got a news background, right? So if you say something newsworthy, I have a bell go off in my head, and as soon as I get off the phone, I'm thinking about that before I'm thinking about a feature story or a Instagram. That's the first thing I think about.
Yeah.
But I find musicians are like, can you not write a clickbait story? And it's like, well, you said it. You said it. It's in an interview. I just don't understand. Musicians are the only people I deal with who don't get the process. I don't know what you tell them about it. Yeah,
Mate, we're all nuts. We're absolutely nuts. Like, I don't care. You can clickbait the shit out of me. I really don't care. I mean, if there's anything negative, derogatory, whatever, mate, do whatever you need to do. That's fine.
Oh, there's nothing. You've said nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knows? They've only just started. So
before the next song, I've written down a couple of things I did want to ask you about. The first song, King's Revolution, you've sampled a movie or something there. Where did that come from? I guess it's copyright free. It's statute of limitations. What was it?
Yeah. There's usually some samples that you can get for free online, which is something that you can use, which is good. But yeah, I think it was as I mentioned previously with this album, it's a little bit more in a positive light. It's a bit more fun. Kings of the Revolution was that one, and Shot Down are pretty much the only sort of political type songs that we've written. And yeah, it was written in the height of COVID. And I mean, one of the best things to come out of the old lockdowns, especially here when we couldn't really leave the house for a year and a half, was there's been some kick-ass content, and like all the music that's come out has just been really sort of, I guess, organic, and that's what you can't fake. You can't just there's a difference between being able to put a song together just for the fuck of it, and then others and just have a, compared to a song where you're actually going through everything. And a lot of people are going through it, and people, they're just overhearing it these days. But that's why we wanted to sort of write a song like Kings of the Revolution, because it doesn't necessarily state that that's what it was about. And I think it's really important for people to sort of listen to a song and take their own out of it. It's good to have that universal appeal to a song.
Yeah. Well, should we? I don't want to preempt the next song we're going to play. But should we? What is the next song we're going to play? What you tell us?
Let's play Kings of the Revolution. Let's do it.
Listen to that movie sample. Start again. Welcome back. Final part of our interview with Glenn from Shotgun Mistress. Thank you for joining us, and it's been a really interesting interview. He's also a publicist, and his guitarist is a former embalmer, so that's really interesting stuff.
I was waiting for this.
Yeah. Does he ever talk to you about his time as an embalmer?
Look, he's told us some stories which I can't sort of repeat, unfortunately. But there's the thing with Matt is that you look at Matt, and he's the quintessential heavy metal, death metal guitarist, and you look at him and you think, what kind of job outside of music would this guy have? And you couldn't get a job more fitting than being an embalmer. And man, he's been doing it for like 20-something years. He did it for 10 years over in the UK. He's done it back here, and he still does it. And man, like you've got to be a certain person to be able to, I guess, stomach some things that you can see. And he's told me some things. I'm like, man, I can barely kill a fucking spider, let alone seeing, body parts and putting them all together. And I do know that if you're doing any sort of autopsy or anything, and they take the brain out to check weight and everything, or any organs, when they put you back together again, they don't put your organs back. Like if you cut the brain out, the brain just goes in the belly, sews you up. So it's like a little sort of trifle, a little human trifle.
That's just, I mean, that is so death metal though, and obviously straight ahead hard rock was the itch he had to scratch, but does he still have the death metal itch, or does he scratch that by going to work?
He's actually got he's got a couple other bands. I don't know if you've done much history on Matt, but he actually ended up being Joel McIver, which is an English author that did the I don't know if you know Joel. The Metallica
100.
Justice for All. Yeah, Top 100. Yeah, so he did. He was author for Metallica's Justice for All biography. So Matt got to, I think, 98 on the top 100 metal guitarists in the world, and he that's for a lot of his work in like Berserker and Akakok, heaps of these big Bremelin, heaps of these bigger sort of metal bands. Not really my cup of tea. I like some harmony, but he's in a band here in Australia called Werewolves, and God, they started about the same time as Shotgun, but they got 5 albums. They're like releasing an album a year.
Wow.
So yeah, like he's definitely got a massive foot still in the metal scene, and I think rock's his holiday.
Right. Okay, cool. We've got some reader questions coming up, but before we have them, I just want to ask you also about image. Like, and as you said, like I've been reading some of the reviews, and someone said, compared to like Skid Row, late era Skid Row, stuff like that. And do you talk about it? Does the stuff just evolve naturally, and do you get told, like, is there stuff you can't wear on stage because it's? Or do you just talk about what you're going to wear on stage? Has it got to stay t-shirt and jeans? Or I know you kind of dress. You kind of wear. You're the only guy who wears a collar, maybe, on stage. I mean, so is it like So just talk to us about image and the conversations that go on within the band about that.
I love image. I'm quite theatrical. I like to be quite theatrical on stage. I like to do some costume changes. I should be doing more, and I think I will. Coming up to this tour that's starting on Monday. Dave's the same. I mean, he's a drummer, so he can't really do costume changes, but he loves that sort of LA strip, 90s Velvet Revolver sort of vibe. So he's a massive fan of people like Matt Sorum. So Matt and Ben. Matt usually has he's like Bart Simpson. He'll always wear a similar thing. These khaki 3/4 with track pants underneath, and just very metal. So I'm not expecting him to change anytime soon, but I definitely think image is quite important. You know, jeans and t-shirt just don't cut it personally, especially if you're trying to sort of stand out with all this.
Yeah.
What was the other question again? A part of it?
No, and your discussions within the band, are there rules about, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. As far as look, there's a lot of references to bands that we really think about when it comes to writing. It doesn't necessarily get brought up as a talking topic when we're writing, but what does tend to happen is when the songs are in its infancy, and Matt writes the guitar part for it, he'll write the title of this piece of music is called Iron, and that's like, it's probably because it reminds me of Iron Maiden, and this song's Pantera. So there is definitely parts to the writing process that definitely stick in our heads when it comes to having some really old legacy bands a part of it. And with the new album, there's Guns N' Roses vibes with the ballad, obviously with whistling. I didn't want it to be, but that's how it ended up. It's All Right, I think, is such a really good party track, but it's got really good. I guess we're listening to ZZ Top and early day Aerosmith at the time, so it's really got that sort of bluesy essence to it. So there's definitely a lot of inspirations, and but yeah, it doesn't really get spoken about.
Well, okay, we do have some questions from readers, one of which I think is one of your bandmates. But as a publicist and a member of the band, one last question from me is, how do you break into kind of like mainstream Australia? How do you get on Triple M? How do you get in on Sunrise? like that sort of glass ceiling there. What is that glass ceiling, and can it be broken by a rock band, or is that the way in which rock is dead, that a new rock band just will never get there?
I think music industry is a completely different machine to what it was, even 5 years ago. Is there a relevance for radio? Definitely. It's still a platform that's, widely used, more so with, drive homes and drive ins to work. People still are loving radio. Digital platforms are a place where, musos and rock bands especially can find their placements a little bit easier than FM stations. So, if the Aussie platforms like Triple M Aussie get inundated with music, as you could tell, and that's only sort of one sort of segment in the whole of Triple M network. So they get so inundated, there is possibilities that you can get in. You get spot plays here and there, but then they invented Triple M Hard and Heavy, which is the digital platform. So we get a lot of Triple M Hard and Heavy's added almost every song of ours that we released as a single. So we've been extremely blessed for that. And that isn't because I'm a publicist. I mean, the guys there only just found out that I was. I try to sort of keep it as secretive as possible, because we only release music in sort of quiet times with my work, because I don't want to sort of take away from the artist as well. And I try to sort of keep it as private as possible. But people are starting to know, and I think it's really important to let people know that you can work in the industry, earn a bit of coin, and help everyone out as well. So,
Okay. So the questions, firstly from Andrew Sharp, is your record company going to push you? Warning: a lot of staff at JB Hi-Fi don't know who you are. I tossed up whether to read that one out, but you've got to take the good with the bad.
Just say it. Why not? Yeah, maybe someone's going to be writing something about you now. Andrew, great. JB Hi-Fi. We actually had our debut album in JB Hi-Fi Insanity a couple of years ago. It might still be there. Who knows? I don't know. That was when we were signed. We're going in independently this time, and we're absolutely loving it. I think you can do a whole lot more independently this time. So we've got our online store, and we've got sort of local record stores, one in each capital city around Australia, which we'll be announcing in the next couple of days, that's stocking it as well. So you can definitely do it yourself. Was that the question? Have I just?
The question was, I think it was just basically a dig, because he went into JB and they didn't know who you are, and he wanted you to know that. I think that was basically the point.
Yes, right. Well, I mean, maybe I guess there's no more albums there anymore. Maybe it's all gone. But I know that I think you can order the debut album on there, but as far as the new one is concerned, we're going in a little bit more organic this time. But definitely, hit us up on Shotgun Mistress, and we can help you out.
I saw one of those little things in there. It said cheap tricks. So I don't think rock is their strong suit anyway.
I actually had an old school buddy of mine that emailed me maybe a year or so ago, and he said, "Man, I used to have a solo career, Glenn Patrick Band. Please don't look it up; it's terrible." And 2005 or something, I recorded a little 3-track EP DVD thing, and he said, "Man, I found your DVD in a JB reject bin for like $2." So I think that was my debut in JB Hi-Fi.
Things can only get better at JB for you then. Chris Casey says, what are your biggest influences?
Oh, good question, Chris. My personal influences, look, I loved Velvet Revolver. I loved Scott Weiland. He wasn't always on point, but when he was an absolute ball terror. I have got a massive soft spot for Aerosmith, as I mentioned. But man, I hate to admit it, I loved Bon Jovi when I was growing up. I used to listen to that instead of the Wiggles. So I think growing up, cock rock bands were influences as a kid, and then you kind of grew into these things. But people like Slash and Miles Kennedy, Alter Bridge. I know that it's a bit cock rocky, but I love that. The other boys love people like Pantera and a lot more of those sort of heavier metal bands. I saw Pantera at Knotfest just a couple of months ago, and they were awesome. But I think people like Hailstorm as well. I love Hailstorm. Lizzie Hale's a phenomenal singer.
Do you hope Lizzie Hale stays in Skid Row? And also last night I was listening to Duff McKagan on Eddie Trunk last night, and he was asked whether Velvet Revolver had any future at all, and he said no. So that's I guess that's maybe Scott Weiland's the best. I think he's the best frontman I ever saw live. So maybe that does need to be left where it is. Oh, that's two things.
Man. Yeah, no, and you know how I don't know if you've seen the Velvet Revolver the sort of video of the rise of Velvet Revolver, rise and fall of Velvet Revolver, which I think was done through Eddie Trunk as well. And I think they went through so many singers, like just hundreds and thousands of demos, and there was a real hard find trying to find a singer. So I think they just didn't want to go through it again.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think Duff's got enough going on, and Slash at the moment anyway. So a certain Ben Kerno has said, he says, what is your favorite Hot Metal magazine poster from back in the day?
For anyone that doesn't know, Benny is the bass player. He's a larrikin. Can't wait to go on tour with Ben because he is the life of the party. And in true Glenn Patrick style, what was the question, Ben?
What is your favorite Hot Metal magazine poster from back in the day?
Oh, okay. Yep. Oh man, you're gonna hate me for this, but I had a it wasn't Hot Metal Mag, it was a Rolling Stones magazine poster, and it was fucking Spice Girls because I had a massive crush on Emma Bunton. Don't tell anybody. Had nothing to do with the music, but my God, she was.
You had a Spice Girl. The front man of Shotgun Mistress had a Spice Girls poster on his bedroom wall. Well, I found my clickbait. I found my blabbermouth.
You found the clickbait.
Yeah. I found my story for blabbermouth now. Thank you. I'll hang up now. Final comment, Matt Ross. I had every magazine from number 1, which was fucked as it had Barnsey on it. I don't think that's a question. But anyway, thanks for that, Matt. Thanks for that, Matt. And that was
Barnsey
awesome.
Ain't that bad.
Yes,
Barnsey's all right. But actually, one of our mates, Taylor Sheridan, is main support for Jimmy Barnes on his Australian tour, which started last night. And he's currently number 1 in the album charts, Taylor Sheridan as well. So big shout out to him as well.
Yeah, and Chisel are going on a big tour and selling. We're not as tribal as we were when we were younger. Everyone was tribal, like that sort of rock hated that sort of rock. Now, right, you know what I mean? Everyone's a little bit more sort of open-minded these days, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's because there's subgenres of subgenres of subgenres, and people just don't give a shit anymore. It's definitely I know what you're getting at because people who loved, they got really pissed off when you said Jimmy Barnes when it's a Cold Chisel song, or vice
Yeah,
versa.
yeah.
And now it's like, man, who gives a shit? It's all Barnesy.
Yeah. Like Wolf Hoffman from Accept said that he actually prefers the scene now because a larger group of people are supportive, whereas back then it was like, I like German metal, and and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I don't like you, and
yeah,
so
definitely.
it's actually,
Which,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. Which
yeah.
would have been, except probably would have been Ben's heavy metal poster on his wall when he was younger. I reckon he loves Accept.
London Leather Boys, maybe the.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.